on the major issues facing our country today, in which our President is trying to solve by himself. He has his hands full with many problems such as drugs, alliances with the Americans, territorial problems with China, drug conviction of one of our Filipino compatriots in Indonesia, our relationships with the ASEAN, and the perception of the international community towards the Philippines, which may adversely impact investments to our country, hiring and employment of our seamen, exports of tuna and sardine products, and our competitiveness as a country vis-a-vis our ASEAN neighbors, whether for tourism, trade, or investments. We in the Congress should try to help the President solve many of the problems plaguing the country, because it is good for the country. It is good for our people. Today, Mr. President, when we debate these issues, I will not win or I will not lose. The others will try to win or will lose, but in reality, we all work very hard here to make the people win. That is why we're here, to search for solutions, to address problems that will make the people win, uplift their human dignity, and alleviate human suffering. That is why we're here, Your Honor. That's the conversation I would like to have with everybody here in the chamber. And having said that, Your Honor, let me start by giving you the factual situation that we face in terms of drugs and terrorism in connection with the recent declaration of the President of national emergency. Mr. President, when we talk about drugs, terrorism, all the other things that plague us, such as riding in tandem, vigilante killings, we have to make ourselves be aware of the situation in our country. We cannot be strangers. We cannot be outsiders. We cannot be mere watchers and say, it's none of my business, because our country has been doing that. That is why, Mr. President, nabulaga tayo. Biglang lumabas lahat ang mga karumal-dumal na nangyayari. 700,000 people have surrendered as drug pushers or drug users, and so many people have been killed. Now, because of what the President has done, and by the way, I'm not doing this for the President. I'd like to think that I'm doing this sincerely for our country. And let me just say, there's a lot of separation going on right now since the President started this effort. When he declared in the elections, before the elections, sabi niya ganon, pag ako nanalo, magiging madugo. Maraming mamamatay ng mga pusher, mga drug users. Hindi siya nagtatago. Wala siyang tinago sa atin. And perhaps because he knew ang pulso ng bayan, talaga suka-suka na, ayaw na, noong nangyayari, na napapabayaan na namamatay ang tao, nagkalat at nagtalamak ang droga, kahit na laban si Senator Soto at iba mga kasama natin dito, ay wala pa rin nangyayari na talagang mabisa. And so today, nung manalo siya, 6 million votes, and up to now, he has about 94% or 91% of the electorate saying they're for him, at least insofar as August is concerned. I do not know what the latest survey will indicate. But you have a president now that is a damn the torpedoes, down the throat, stare you down approach. Talagang diretsa kung doon nasa isip niya, nasa puso niya, sasabihin niya. And having said that, Mr. President, let us go through a travelogue, if you will, sa nangyayari sa bayan. Di ba niyo napapansin? Marami ngayon talagang humihiwalay. They're trying to separate themselves from the situation of drugs. Bakit? Nakita ninyo, nung umupo, hindi pa siya umupo, marami nang namatay. Marami nang pinaslang. Bukod doon sa namamatay sa riding in tandem, maraming pinaslang ng mga drug pushers, drug users. Lalo na, nung unprecedentedly, the President took out the maskara, tinanggal ang maskara ng ilang mga general, and unprecedentedly expose their names to the public. Aba, di lalong dumami. Sapagkat ngayon, yung mga polis na nag-aalaga ng droga, talaga siguro, sinabi ko na ito dati, they may be trying to separate themselves from their people who have been selling drugs for them so that they would enrich themselves, at para mawala yan, they would separate them by eliminating them. That's a possibility, Your Honor. The second possibility is the drug lords are trying to separate themselves from their pushers. Because mahuhuli sila. Baka may testigo na pag sinunda mo yung user, tinanong mo kung sino ang pusher niya, at nahuli mo yung pusher, tinanong mo kung sino supplier ng pusher, at tinanong mo yung supplier ng pusher, kung sino talaga supplier doon sa kanyang region, hanggang umabot ka doon sa pinakamataas na drug lord, ay may tama siya sapagkat merong trail. Merong witness trail na pwede magtestigo laban doon sa drug lord. In fact, in our hearings here, sinabi sa atin nung hearing ni Senator Lima at saka ni Senator Lacson, tinanong natin, ano ba ang punot dulo nito? Tinanong ko si General De La Rosa at ang sabi niya, ang punot dulo po nito ay galing sa China. Karamihan ang drugs. Walang pasubaling sinabi yan, and because of that, we wrote a letter right away to the DFA, and thank the heavens, the DFA through Secretary Yasay acted and sent a letter right away to China. I cannot divulge because he asked me not to divulge it, but certainly I'm sure it got China's attention because no country would want to be accused that they are practically sponsoring the sending of drugs to another country. Having said that, Your Honor, it is important for us to understand that we have to make sure that we understand where we're coming from. When the President says, papatayin natin ang mga nagtutulak, kahit hindi niya sinasabing patayin mo yan, ang ibig sabihin niyan, para may tacit order, tacit, implied order, na gagalaw at gagalaw yung pulis kahit walang alaga yan. At sasabihin niya, kailangan mawala ito mga nagtutulak ng droga. In the process, baka madulas, baka ma-violate ang human rights sa sinasabi. Tama lang na maganda tayo sa human rights. Because no one in the Senate, I'm sure, will not protect human rights. Because that is our oath. Kasama sa oath natin yan. Na talagang to promote justice at saka talagang equality for all. And having said that, Mr. President, you have to make sure na tuloy nyo, after his inauguration, he again warned drug users and pushers that to stop and to surrender, to surrender. If not, he will expose them. And in fact, he did. And you know, since July 1, there have been almost 3,000 people killed. Unprecedented. 3,000 kaluluwa ang namatay. And because of that, 700,000 drug users have surrendered or pushers, of which 52,000 were drug pushers. Unprecedented. Magaling. Natakot. Lumabas lahat. Perhaps PNC, sinabi ko na yung PNC are killing their snitches, pati mga drug lords, pinapatay ang kanilang ang kanilang mga tauhan. And all of a sudden, some of us finally became aware that there was a huge problem. Finally, instead of saying, we do not want drugs, we do not want the crime situation in this country, for the first time, sinasabi natin, dapat mapigil na yan, at sigaw lang tayo ng sigaw dati. Ngayon, may gumagalaw, ngunit pag gumalaw ang Pangulo, meron rin talbog yan. Talbog sa human rights, na talagang it is not unexpected. Tama lang na may sasagot, because kung mali ang ginagawa, dapat may tatayo. That is important in a democracy. Having said that, what is the prevailing drug situation in our country? 3.7 million Filipinos, according to the Dangerous Drugs Board and the PIDEA, are affected or infected by drugs. Of that, 1 million are young people. Ang daming bata sa Pilipinas, kung papabayaan natin ito, lalaganap ito, they will not have a future. Sayang yung ating demographics na dapat maganda sabagat maraming bata, there are a lot of young people, na talagang makakakuha ng trabaho yung kung papaaralan natin ng gusto, lalakas ang ating bansa. Pero kung yan ay malululol sa masamang bisyo, talagang masisira pa ang ating kinabukasan ng ating bansa. Having said that, sinabi ko na sa inyo, galing sa China, according to De La Rosa, according to PIDEA, according to the Dangerous Drugs Board, galing sa China, and that must be addressed. Now, so far, Mr. President, we have identified drug lords here. Unahin natin halimbawa, yung si Jaguar. Ang pangalan noon ay, lalaman ninyo na pinatay siya ang drug lord ng Eastern Visayas, kung di ako nagkakamali. Ang pangalan niya, Franklin, tama ba yun? Hindi. Ang pangalan niya, sorry, I just have to confirm that very well. Jeffrey Jaguar Diaz, Central Visayas drug lord. Sinundan ito ni Melvin Odicta, Dragon. Kung may Jaguar, may Dragon. At si Dragon rin, napaslang kasama ng kanyang asawa. At makikita natin na ito ay pinatay noong August 29. But upon the other hand, marami nang nahuling drug lords, kuno. Pero ang tanong ko, sinabi si Peter Lim, he was able to fly to China and back to the Philippines according to police intelligence given to President Duterte. Peter Wu Tuan Ko, drug lord, mastermind, despite being a new believed prison inmate, ayun ay naghahasik ng lagim at dilim doon sa bilibid. Herbert Ampang Kulangko, a new believed prison inmate. Aba lahat sila, VIP treatment. May banda, may jacuzzi, maraming pera, maraming baril. At nakikita nyo, nakalagay dyan sa new believed prison, nahuli yung dami ng baril doon sa loob ng pitang. Pakipatay lang ang ilaw para makita naman natin yung pinapakita sa boss atin dito. At para malaman ninyo na hindi lang drugs, hindi lang, pati pera, marami, pati babae nakakapasok. At sabi ni Bato, doon ginagawa pa yung mga shabu na pinapalabas. At alam natin, labas-pasok pa doon. At alam ko na, nakakalabas kunyari, mag-hospital, I have proof of that, na yung mga drug lord nakakalabas. Hindi lang yan. Pumapatay pa. Pumapatay pa. Nung ako'y unang senador, nagpunta sa akin si Mrs. Rosales, kung hindi ko nagkakamali, ako'y tumayo rito, at in-expose ko, pinatay siya ng motorcycle riding gunman sa Batangas. Pinatay yung judge dahil kinonvict niya. At later on, in April this year, pinatay yung kanyang abogado nitong drug lord na ito. Dahil, di umano, binayaran niya dapat yung judge ng 10 million, hindi tinanggap ng judge, binulsa, di umano, ng abogado. Kaya bumawi yung drug lord, pinatay yung abogado. At pagkatapos, Your Honor, tinangkang papatay at tithreaten si Justice Art Brion. Malaking iskandalo yun kung yan ay iungkatin. At alam ito ng kaibigan natin si Senator Ping Lacson. Pag nang tinanong ko ito, kagad sinabi niya kagad si Justice Brion. And, Mr. President, ganyan katapang yung mga yan. Having said that, apart from the VIP treatment, meron na ba tayong closure? If you look at all the pictures, and if you can show the pictures, yung tumutugtog pa si Kulangko, meron nagsasaxophone dyan, marami nangyayari. Concert equipment, appliances found during believed raid, and approval of former prison officials. Tanong, meron na ba tayong inimbestiga rito na prison official? Why? Wala po. Awanin. No closure. Next. Makikita nyo dyan na talagang marami nangyayari. Hindi na natin makikita yan. Can you go to the next slide, please? Galing sa China. Sinabi na po natin yan at makikita nyo. At ang nangyari na nga ay yung report nga to this day, Chinese laboratories are still operating in our cities. Just the other day, in Angeles City, sa ilalim ng isang poultry farm, nahuli yung mga Chinese doon sa Angeles City na may shabu laboratory. You all know that. That is a public knowledge. Ang lalakas ng loob pa rin. So, madaling sabi talaga, meron tayong kinakailangan gawin para talaga masugpo itong mga nagtitinda ng droga sa ating bayan. Meron pa rin drug making sa Valenzuela na nahuli, drug laboratories. Sa Parañaque Jail, pumutok about 3 weeks ago. Sumabog, may pasabog doon. Meron floating shabu laboratory na nahuli sa Subic Bay. My beloved Subic Bay, nakita nyo na isang araw, meron nahuli doon, kinunvict, 6 ata yung na-convict sa Subic for drug pushing. So, makita ninyo, even that discipline has gone down. And talagang there is proliferation of drugs. Nakikita nyo, kayang suhulan ang mga nasa correctional, kayang suhulan ang mga mayor, na tinanggal na rin ang maskara ng ating Pangulo. Although, of course, sabi ng iba, extrajudicial killing of reputation yon. But as you know, in libel cases, ang mga public officials hindi tinatabla ng libelo sapagkat that is to be expected. Dapat sagutin nila yung mga kasong yan. Although, siyempre, masakit kung hindi mo naman ginagawa. Medyo nagkakaroon ngayon ng takot ang lahat. At least, nag-iingat. So, having said that, marami pa nangyari. Ang nakakadagdag dito at matindi yung tinatawag nating vigilante killings. Ang sinasabi ng mga pulis, napakaraming vigilante killings. Inaamin nila, pumapatay sila. Pero hindi pa rin natin nakukuha yung report ng tinatawag natin ng internal affairs. Nasa batas yan, tayo ang gumawa. We did that. Pero hanggang ngayon, mabagal pa ang report sa atin. Pero may vigilante killings the other day. Siguro kilala ito ni Senator Soto. At ito ay yung babae na kapatid ng isang artista, si Maritoni Fernandez. Sister of Maritoni Fernandez was murdered. May signage pa. Nakalagay yata doon nagtitinda sa mga entertainers ng pusher. Hindi ko mabasa eh. So makita nyo, talagang dumadaloy pa. Nakita natin, hindi natin makakalimutan ang makabagbag damdamin na isang dating drug pusher ay napatay ng mga nakamotorsiklo at tinabaga parang pieta. Yung mahal na birin, hawak yung Panginoon ni si Kristo, yun ang pinalabas ng mga dyaryo doon sa litrato na yun. Makabagdamdamin nga, pero makabagbagdamdamin rin, yung sinabi ni Marie Crista Mora, ang nakikita sa dyaryo ay yung mga drug pusher na pinapatay, pero hindi nyo nakikita yung hinasik nilang lagim at dilim sa mga pamilya na mga tumanggap ng droga sa mga pamilya. Yun talagang inuumitan. Yun talagang nagnanakaw na, nag-hold up na at nagtutulak na ng husto. So talaga may balancing, may conflict. So today we are indeed in conflict with what is happening to our country. The other day, a bloody Baguio shooting came up. There are shootouts everywhere in my city. 3 bata napatay, nasa kotse, pinatay. Franklin Bambico, with his pregnant partner, he was killed by unidentified gunmen in Lourdes subdivision in Baguio City. At meron pang isa doon sa Dumaguete, doon sa Inulgan, motorsiklo, tinago ng drug pusher, yung kanyang anak, nung bariling siya, hindi alam ng pulis na binabaril niya pala, ay may dalang bata sa loob ng damit ng drug pusher. Patay rin. Tanong, meron kang tanong araw, south of the border, down Mexico way. Are we going down Mexico way? Because Mexico is a drug-infested country. They have lost their handle on drugs, Mr. President. Nakikita nyo, ang partner natin ng araw sa galleon trade, and we traded in silver and goods, makikita nyo, resulted in thousands of killings. Narinig nyo si El Chapo, kung matindi yung mga drug pusher dito na may combo, may babae sa loob ng preso, si El Chapo, nakahukay sa ilalim ng preso, at naglagay ng motorsiklo, naglagay ng highway, sa ilalim ng preso para makatakas sa pamamagitan ng motorsiklo. Antindi, nabayaran niya lahat yung mga taong na humahawak ng preso. Kaya makikita nyo, ganun katindi pagka pumasok na. Ang sikat na series ngayon na pinapanood, I'm sure, ni Joel Villanueva, nakikipag-holding hands pa siya sa kanyang may bahay, ay yung Narcos. Nag-uusapan namin ito na isang araw. Pablo Escobar. At ako rin, I must confess, because I was preparing for this, Narcos talaga, makita nyo kung paano hinawakan na isang drug pusher ang isang bansa called Colombia. At talagang he became one of the richest men in the world. At kailan siya natigil, nung kinulog sa sinara ang gripo ng kanyang pera, kinuha lahat yung kanyang pera sa bangko, yung kanyang mga ari-arian, pero tuloy pa rin sapagat ang dami niyang bahay na nagtanim siya ng pera, meron mga puno, nagtanim siya ng pera, may nakuha pa siya, tuyot-tuyot na yung pera, hindi niya na magamit. So, ganun katindi. They are more industrious than those who follow the law in finding ways and means to perpetrate their evil upon us. The United States of America is the biggest market for drugs. And do you know that the U.S. declared its war on drugs in 1971? May war on drugs, Mr. President, in 1971. Declared by President Nixon. It has spent, and they put out $51 billion a year. Ewan ko, mahina ako sa arithmetic, pero pag kinumplit nyo iba yan, times 15 na lang para madali, baka mas malaki pa sa budget ng Philippine government yan. $51 billion a year. 1.5 billion arrests for drug law violations in 2014, and of this, 1.3 million or 83% were for possession only. Laking problema nila, meron pa silang kampanya na Say No to Drugs ni Mrs. Reagan. So the result is the same. Whether it's Colombia, whether it's America, whether it's Mexico, whether it's in the Philippines or the United States, jails are overloaded. Ganyan katindi ang impact niyan. Corruption everywhere. Inaabot ang narco-politics, international drug trafficking. Are we headed that way too? That is my question. Kita nyo, pati FARC sa Colombia, inabot. Dito, pati ilang mga sinasabi nila, pati mga NPA raw, meron na rin kasama dyan sa drug pushing because ang laki ng perang nakukuha dyan. It alarms me that with the spate of killings and the number of estimated drug users and pushers in their country, and with 1% of our population of school-age youth, we may go to that direction unless we stop the momentum by recognizing that we do have three major problems in drugs. Yung ating kabataan, tinatamaan. That's the first problem. 2.7 million adult drug pushers, of which 700,000 have surrendered. Di natin halos alam kung anong gagawin sa mga surrender, 700,000. I have ideas on that. We can go even and say, pwede yung mga private drug rehabilitation centers can take in this drug rehab and the government will pay them. But I'm really not too sure about that. I'm not really so hot about that. But I can tell you, Mr. President, the ongoing continuous killing, and this is another problem, that now totals 3,000 since July 1 to September 11. Do we want that? I can ask every senator here. Do we want that? And we have to search into our soul, into our conscience, whether we want that. I'm sure the President is severely stressed by this. Of course, it doesn't help when you say Thailand killed a lot of people as well, and that in Colombia, they killed over 500,000. Over 500,000 people in Colombia. Yun ang informal report. In Mexico, over 130,000 have been killed. So, sabihin natin, mababa pa tayo. But the point is, we have to address the problem. And, makikita nyo, ang sabi sa atin dito, ang problema, number one, alam ni General Lacson ito, non-appearance of prosecution witness. Di dumadating yung police. So, 28%, patay yung kaso. At ako po ay nag-file ng bill ngayon, pa-file natin ngayon, kung titignan niyo yung bill ko nakalagay doon, insufficiency of evidence 14%, 28%, naka-address po. Later on, makikita nyo, meron tayo nakalagay dyan kung anong gagawin natin doon. Insufficiency of evidence, that goes into competence, skill, efficiency, reasonable doubt, at least hindi nakahanda ng kaso. Demurrer to evidence granted by the court, 9%. Irregularity, illegality of the arrest, search and seizure, again, training. Failure to comply, Section 21 of RA 9165, yung chain of custody, hindi nasusunod. Na kailangan lilitatuan, nakaharap ang barangay captain, nakalahat yung mga ibang mga kailangan gawin, hindi nasusunod, kaya nadidismiss ang kaso. And then, death of the accused. Yan po, nangyayari na yan. Namamatay na po yung mga drug pushers. Kaya hindi na nakahabol lahat. Andiyan ang acquitted, reasonable doubt 31%, halos opposite lang ng sinasabi ko, kaya mababasa po natin yan. I will make that of record. In other words, it seems we have been losing the drug war, and narco-politics among LGUs ay kumakalat, among national officials kumakalat, sa ating mga piitan, sa ating Bureau of Correctional, sa mga detention center natin kumakalat, at maaaring kumakalat yan sa pangangampanya ng mga politiko. Ginagamit na campaign fund. So, I'm raising the red flag. We have to act, Mr. President. Let us now move on to the second major problem that we have, terrorism. We have the NPA, which is the longest insurgency in Asia for the last 5 decades. If you include Hukbalahap, talagang pinakamahaba na. So, mga kasama, it has spread throughout Luzon, moving to Visayas and Mindanao. Nakikita nyo, andyan yan. Meron tayong MILF. Nagbibili tayo, magkaroon tayo ng kabayapaan dyan sa MILF. At marami rin napapastang. MILF, yan ang original. Pero matindi ngayon, Mr. President, is Abu Sayyaf. Abu Sayyaf is primarily based in Basilan and Sulu. I've encountered them. I've talked with them. Because kinidnap rin yung mga kasamahan namin sa Red Cross. Andun po ako sa Basilan, nung kinuha ko po yung mga teachers, sama ko si Governor Salabudin, at saka yung Red Cross administrator namin, nung kinuha namin sa Abu Sayyaf, yung mga teachers na kinuha nila in the year 2000. They know the landscape. Sabi nga ni Gringo, nasan diyan sila naglaro, alam nila, lamang na lamang sila sa labanan sa ating gobyerno. They have been declared as a terrorist organization under the US FTO law, Intelligence Reform and Terrorism Prevention Act of 2004. It's a long history of terrorism, but nothing has happened. Every year, sasabihin nila, 200 na lang, bisan 300. Eh bakit ngayon, lumalaki pa, 400 to 800. Hindi natin nasusupil yan. For example, some of the atrocities committed by these groups are as follows. Davao Night Market Bombing, September 2. Kamakailan lang yan. 14 killed. 71 injured. A policeman, SPO1 J. Adremisin, who was relaxing in the Ross Night Market after a quick massage. Tepok. Philippine Red Cross Sultan Kudarat Chapter volunteer, Krista Bisnon. Krista was a registered nurse who volunteered to work with the PRC chapter in Sultan Kudarat. Pati siya, tinamaan, patay. The Butik attack in Danau del Sur, May 30, 2016, 56 killed, 54 militants, 2 soldiers. The Davao International Airport bombing, nagpunta ako dyan, in 2003, March, 22 killed. Sinundan yan the following month ng Davao sa seaport bombing, April 2, 2003. 17 killed. You can see the bombings and the pictures of that. The Super Ferry bombing in Manila Bay, February 27, 2004. 116 people killed. Dos Palmas kidnapping, May 27, 2001. June 7, 2002. 22 Filipino soldiers killed in the process of trying to get them over the next 10 months. Trying to rescue the 20 hostages taken, of which 5 were killed, including the husband of Gracia Burnham. And who can forget? Nagte-text yung ina, ang sagot ng Abu Sayyaf, hawak ko na yung cellphone ng anak mo, patay na ang son mo, wala na ang ulo niya. Pinutulan na namin ang ulo niya kahapon, August 31, 2016. At kung ikaw ay pupunta rito, puputulan ka rin namin ang ulo. Brazen, agonizing, we're just wringing our hands because wala tayong magawa. Lanao del Sur jailbreak, Maute, August 28. Recent lang ito, now showing, practically. 23 prisoners escaped. Ano ba ang mga atrocities ng Abu Sayyaf from 1995 to 2016? Tagal na. 144 soldiers killed, of which 23 were beheaded. 1 civilian killed, beheaded. 48 injured, 32 kidnapped. It is to be noted. Nakasama rin tayo dyan nung kinuha natin yung mga hostages ng Abu Sayyaf. The ASG have kidnapped from 2000 to 2008 21 journalists, of which 7 were Filipino nationals. 14 were foreign journalists from different nationalities. 8 Germans, 4 French, 1 Australian, 1 Danish. Show here a slide of the raid in Entebbe, sapagkat kinikidnap nila ngayon. Ngayon pa lang, 4 na Malaysians ang kinidnap. Sa barko, sa boat. Pwede nangyari sa Entebbe. Pakibalik lang yung raid on Entebbe, kung saan ay sumugod ang Israel from 2,500 miles out and went to Africa on board C-130s and raided Uganda. Napahiya Uganda, parang walang kalaban-laban, walang sovereignty, napatay pa nila yung maraming Ugandan troops, sira nila yung mga aeroplano, and they got it. Di ba pwede mangyari sa atin yan? Sinabi na nga, nag-iingay na nga yung mga Indonesians, pati Canadians, narinig ko, naulinigan ko na gusto nilang sumugod na sa Sulu o sa Basilan laban sa Abu Sayyaf. We must not allow that, Mr. President. And so now, Mr. President, andito sa raid on Entebbe, pati yung kapatid ng Prime Minister ngayon, na si Bibi Netanyahu, kapatid niya ang nag-raid doon sa Entebbe, si Yoni Netanyahu. Siya lang ang casualty ng Israel. He was a general, he was killed in that raid sa Entebbe. Let me now go back to the present and show you a slide of foreigners who have been kidnapped by the ASG in the last 2 years. 37 foreigners were kidnapped in total and brought to Basilan and Sulu. In different parts of Mindanao, the Italian in Dipolog City released in early 2016 after paying ransom. Malaysian Bernard Then kidnapped in Sandakan. Pumupunta pa sa Sandakan and Cebu and Sabah and beheaded in Holo. The Canadians John Risdell and Robert Hall kidnapped in Samal Islands. Pinugutan sa Sulu just recently. Nakausap ko pa iba kidnapper niyan. At humihingi, alam ba hinihingi nyo? 3 bilyon piso ang hinihingi. And, Mr. President, the remaining 12 Malaysians and 22 Indonesians were fishermen sailing in the Sulu Sea area between Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines.